Yep, we have finally made it to the tail end of our Chucky marathon, and by the time this video comes out, the second season should be well over halfway through. And it's either a worthy follow-up or a messy disappointment.
You guys have no idea how disappointed I am. That little bit was not in the original script of that video. Literally, as I got ready to record, I think the season was a week or two away from premiering. While I was recording, I came to the realization that, oh, this has the potential to be bad. So I threw that little bit in there hoping that I'd be proven wrong and that it would, in fact, be a worthy follow-up. It was not. Hello everyone, this is Darion of GNB. And today we will be taking a look at Chucky Season 2.
The second season of Chucky debuted in October 2022, and centers around our hack-and-sack trio through a mishap with our favorite murdering doll and an exploding child, wind up getting sent to a boarding school, which just so happens to be the old stomping grounds of a young Charles Lee Ray. With the end of Season 1 establishing a horde of Chucky dolls, the three work together to find out what mysterious plan Chucky has up his sleeve for all three of them. So clearly, if the opening and title didn't tip you off enough, I was not fond of this season of Chucky. Now I can't say I outright hated it, as there were quite a few things I came out liking and enjoying, but the overall dip in quality we had after the first season is extremely disheartening. The story throughout the season was almost completely non-existent. Very early on, we're introduced to the format of the hack-and-sack kids needing to figure out Chucky's mysterious plan for them, which in my opinion was one of the biggest detriments for this season. I already had slight issues with the way they handled Chucky's evil plan in the first season, namely that it all gets brought up and executed within the last handful of episodes. But at least Season 1 built up to something. We spent unnecessarily long amounts of time dedicated to the kids going through the means of figuring out what Chucky has in store for them, and it amounts to almost nothing. For context, once the kids arrive at the boarding school, a Chucky doll shortly arrives after, but instead of killing them, he's going around taking pictures and relaying information for someone who we only know as the Colonel, which, spoilers, is just another Chucky. We spend a decent amount of time just dicking around with the kids while nothing really meaningful happens. There's almost no legitimate reason as to why we needed to drag a lot of this shit out when we could be spending a lot more time doing literally anything else. A lot of this season just falls flat story-wise. The entire last season we built up to Chucky making an army of himself, only for the first 10 minutes of this season to just completely do away with it almost immediately. That frustrated me so much, because there's a lot you can do with having multiple Chuckies, I feel, and the direction that this season takes with it is just not that good. Something I praised last season for was its well-balanced tone. They didn't shy away from the goofier elements of the franchise, but also mainly stuck to serious storytelling. This season almost completely throws that shit out of the window. The tone this time around leans heavily into the goofy and wacky shit, mainly indicative of the Seed of Chucky style of writing, and I really don't think that was the right call to make. I admire and respect Mancini for not straying away from Seed of Chucky, when most other franchises, if they had as big of a mess as that movie was, they would surely act like it just straight up never existed. So I respect Mancini for never disassociating the franchise from that film, but this really was not the best step to take for this season. A lot of the zany and wacky shit that happens is just not that entertaining in my eyes. I myself only like Seed of Chucky in an ironic sense, so some aspects of them returning to this style of writing I didn't entirely hate, but it results in a lot of weird tonal inconsistencies that leaves me not being able to fully get invested in some of the plot. This is just a style and tone that Chucky really shouldn't have gone back to, and it's really disheartening to hear at the time I'm writing and recording this that the same style is carrying over into Season 3, which just further disappoints me. Something else that also kind of bothers me is this season's obsession with, choosing not to explain shit. It's from small stuff like Tiffany exclaiming that she can only transfer her soul into a Belle doll. Like, why exactly is that the case? Or when Jake and Devin recall a movie called Bride of Chucky. Wait, the fuck? Yeah, at the beginning of the season when our trio regrouped, Jake and Devin recall knowing about a movie called Bride of Chucky. Like, let's just pretend that they found out about it after the events of season 1. The fact that the writers just put that in there without any attempt at explaining how confusing that would be really irritates me. The best explanation that I can come up with is between Seed of Chucky and now, Tiffany as Jennifer Tilly starred in a movie called Bride of Chucky. Even though in Seed they were filming a movie called Chucky Goes Psycho. So if they wanted to name drop a movie for the characters to reference, why didn't they just name drop that? Hell, they show a Chucky Goes Psycho poster in Jennifer Tilly's house, so I don't know why they refrained from referencing it. That, as well as another thing that I'm mixed on, alongside the comedy of Seed making a return, the meta stuff returns too. And I'd say it was alright. Chucky being like a talk show host was not something I really needed, and honestly, something I'm not that fond of either. But the whole episode playing out as a classical murder mystery deal was kinda neat. There is a lot of pop culture stuff that gets called out, not just in that episode, but the whole season, and it worked to varying degrees of success. The writing and general approach to this season just felt so unnecessary. The characters were all a bit of a mixed bag. I feel the need to get this out of the way first and foremost. The way this show severely underutilizes the legacy characters continues to frustrate me. In the first season, while I had issues with seeing folks like Andy and Kyle sparingly, I at least had hope that we'd do more with them in the following season. With the season ending presumably with Andy and Kyle's stories being over, it just disappoints me with how little they did for 2 whole seasons. I didn't need them to be main characters. I'm fine with the Hackensack kids. But come on, man, we could have done way more with these guys. Kyle is alive, not that much of a shocker there. But other than punching Nika in the face a shit ton of times, she didn't do that much. Still love to have her here, though. The same kind of goes for Andy, with him being captured and tortured by Chucky for the past year. The only really interesting thing we get from him, other than a surprisingly improved performance by Alex Vincent. Like, seriously, I know I talked shit about his performance last season, but I don't know what it is. It really works this time around. Anyway, the only really intriguing thing we get is Andy being at conflict over who he is once he gets rid of Chucky. This is some intriguing shit that this season should have spent more time on. But between 2 whole seasons, we barely get any genuine time with Andy, so this little bit just feels like nothing but wasted potential. The direction we took with Nika this season, I honestly really enjoyed. I commented in my Season 1 video about how mixed I was about Nika getting her limbs chopped off. In this season, even though there's not a lot for Fiona Durov to do physically, I still think she did a great job. It was honestly a neat twist to have Nika and Chucky conspiring together to get their own respective bodies and take revenge out on Tiffany. Slight nitpick, but in this scene I personally would have preferred to have Fiona Durov play the actual Charles Lee Ray, kind of like how she did in last season. Because watching Chucky's goofy ass here, I don't know, it kind of takes me out of it a bit. But that goes more into a problem I'll talk about in just a bit. I've seen a few people take issue with the darker turn that Nika takes by the end of this season, but if I'm being honest, given everything this woman has gone through, I think she deserves some revenge. Even if in her condition I can't think of any way she'd be able to pull it off, but we'll just have to wait for Season 3. A big part of this season that I was looking forward to was the return of Glenn and Glenda. And they, along with Nika, were some of my favorite parts of this season if I'm being honest. Mainly Glenda, because unfortunately we don't get that much of Glenn throughout this season. A majority of focus goes to Glenda, which I don't hate. Glenda was a character that we didn't get to really know that much in comparison to Glenn and Seed, so I like the amount of them we get in this season. Their story is interesting, because from being split and put into 2 kids in Seed of Chucky, we have them being at conflict with who they are individually, but also having to come to grips with finding out they have some pretty shit parents. As well as Glenda being at odds with her killer nature, I thought it was really compelling. as well as the way they go into Glenn and Glinda's relationship as a whole. I like how with them being two souls split apart, they make several comments on them both never feeling whole, like they're incomplete, as well as going into how inseparable and connected the two are. I think it was really neat. It still kind of disappoints me that Glenn almost did next to nothing for the whole season before going back into their doll form, though. Glinda got a lot of focus and actually had a lot of interactions with Chucky. And while I like the dives into the relationship with them, I think it was a huge missed opportunity to not have Glenn properly meet Chucky at all this season. Given how fucked their relationship was in Seed, it would have been interesting to do something with them this season. Anyway, I really enjoyed Glenn and Glenda, and the way their story ends this season with them becoming one, even bringing back Billy Boyd to do the voice, was really cute. Now, let's talk about Tiffany. In the first season, people expressed a lot of contention with how she was portrayed as more of a joke character. I personally didn't see her that way. I thought it was more of a decent balance between her goofy and somewhat serious portrayals. It was never a big problem for me. This season, on the other hand, tell me why they turned Tiffany from a character I loved and adored to probably my least favorite character in the whole season. I am not kidding. The writing approach to Tiffany this season, for some reason, turned her into this unnecessarily over-the-top, incompetent ditz. I'll go more into the larger cast in just a bit, but I don't know what it is about the way they directed Jennifer Tilly this season that made her so fucking insufferable. The only time last season I remember her being overtly campy was in like the last 2 episodes, I think. In this season, almost from the get-go, the dialogue is turned all the way up and it just doesn't work. That scene where she was all nervous and stuttery in front of the detective is one example of this character just being turned into an unnecessary and unfunny joke. Tiffany has been killing motherfuckers for ages, and you seriously mean to tell me she's never been questioned by the police? Tiffany used to have this huge air of confidence. Even in a scenario where she was in a pinch, she had a charm to her that allowed her to work through it. Her being portrayed as this nervous, stuttery, clumsy character just doesn't work for me. And do you want to know what's really fucked up? Tiffany was faced with death numerous times throughout this season, and literally every single time she is, I am just hoping that she ends up dying. When Chucky surprises her in the middle of the party, I was hoping he'd shoot her. When Tiffany confronts Nika at the end of the season, I was praying she'd pull the trigger. That last shot in the season finale where Chucky presumably is about to kill her, even though we know that's not the case, I was hoping that'd be the end of her. Which sucks, because I love Tiffany, and I love Jennifer Tilly, but the approach to this character has just gotten so tiresome that I just want it to be done with her. I desperately hope they can clean up the approach for Season 3, because I don't know how much longer I can handle this Tiffany. Now for our hack and sack trio. They were all just okay. Jake and Devin don't really have that much going on. Throughout the season, they mainly just bicker and argue about Chucky. Nothing really intriguing about their relationship together gets any major focus. That kiss at the beginning of the season was really cute, though. Between the three, Devin has the least amount of stuff to do, which kind of sucks, because I think the actor significantly improved from last season, but unfortunately, didn't manage to do that much. Jake's story was somewhat interesting. With the three being sent to a Christian boarding school and the death of his foster brother in the beginning of the season, Jake actually takes a lot of the teachings to heart and works on a path to forgiving himself, and that coincides with a big plot point I'll talk about in just a bit, but as a whole, I thoroughly enjoyed Jake's storyline this season. But between all three, Lexi is most definitely the one to have the most interesting story. Post-Season 1, she's devolved into being a drug addict, and while storylines like this can be a bit hit or miss for me, I think it was handled pretty well. Out of our trio from the previous season, she's undoubtedly the one with the most interesting amount of development. Which for me is saying something, seeing as in my first video, I expressed how half-assed I thought her story was in Season 1. With her almost being the third wheel to Jake and Devin, her feeling alone and devolving into these habits, I thought it was really interesting. Especially when she grows a good friendship with this season's newcomer, Nadine. I just absolutely adore this character. The overtly positive, cheery, and lighthearted character has the makings of being extremely annoying, but that's thankfully not the case here, as I couldn't get enough of Nadine. She's just an infectious little ball of joy, and I can't help but have the dumbest smile on my face whenever she was on screen. She was just great. Anyway, the bond that she and Lexi grew over the course of the season was really good. Obviously, Lexi is dismissive of her at first, but the more Nadine pries and gets to know her and help her with her issues, they form a more meaningful friendship, and it's really cute. All the returning characters from last season, as well as Nadine, were overall pretty good, I'd say. Now for the main man of the hour, Chucky. Upon this most recent rewatch of the season, I don't know what it is, but I just couldn't stand Chucky this season. Actually, I do know what it was. There are a lot of factors that go into what makes me not really like Chucky this much in comparison to last season. First of which is the design. I don't entirely know what it is, but I just hate the design for Chucky this season. Well, maybe hate is a strong word, cause seeing as all things considered, it's not too different from what we come to expect, but it's just something about the face that I can't take seriously. In the first season, Chucky was perfect. Not much else I can say. In this season, he just looks really goofy. Like, maybe they couldn't make a perfect replica of the look from last season, but he just looks really off. It might just be a me thing, in all honesty. But it's not just the look. The way they present Chucky is also an issue as well. The way these scenes are lit and shot and showcased really don't do a good job of portraying Chucky as a legitimate threat to our characters. The way he's written as well goes along with that. Now I think is the right time to mention that we're not dealing with just one Chucky this season. Yeah, the truck exploding in the first episode didn't wipe out every Chucky, as we have 3 main ones to deal with this season. And I can't stand them. We have what I'll call Scout Chucky, the one that was stalking and taking pictures of our Hackensack trio, who eventually turns into Good Chucky through the group brainwashing him for information. Buff Chucky, yeah, I'll talk about him in just a bit. And last but not least, Colonel Chucky. Yeah, I just about hate all 3 of these guys. Again, hate might be a strong word in this instance, because it is Chucky at the end of the day, and he's still very much entertaining, but all these different Chuckies all feel very one-note and gimmicky. And again, it's something that does a big disservice to making Chucky seem like an actual legitimate threat. First of all, Good Chucky. I hate him. Yeah, he was entertaining and unironically adorable as shit at times. It's nice to see Brad Dourif pull off multiple styles of performances with these different Chuckies. And that especially goes for Good Chucky. Now, with Good Chucky, like I said, they play up the cuteness with him, and while it is adorable and entertaining, it makes Chucky feel like more of a joke. But Darion, he's not supposed to be scary. I know, and I wouldn't care as much if the other Chuckies managed to pull through, but neither of them do. Good Chucky also plays a huge role in Jake's development. From the beginning of the season, who I'll just call Kamikaze Chucky, ended up killing Jake's foster brother Gary by, you know. And I'll just go ahead and say what we're all thinking. We were all kind of thankful that he did it, right? I'm not just the only one.
Holy secret identity. Holy Halloween costumes, Batman. Holy homemade bomb backer.
Yeah, like Chuck said, that shit was getting old really damn fast. And Jake being guilt-ridden really takes in a lot of the church's teachings, including the act of forgiveness, with him aiming to forgive and redeem Chucky so that he can in turn forgive himself for what happened to Gary. And it's interesting, to say the least. I'll say that while this little storyline was kind of bland, all things considered, it at least made the conflict with our characters make at least some sense. Not complete sense, but some sense. It was cute seeing Chucky and Jake grow a bond. They had the little dude get baptized and everything, but overall it was just kinda meh. Now, everything I've stated thus far doesn't have that much grounds to get me to hate a character. But the reason I hate this little shit is because he took something away from me personally, goddammit. This little fuck is the one who killed Nadine! Nadine, the sweetest, most innocent, and likable character in this show. Nay, this whole franchise damn near. And this little shit killed her. And for what? On a serious note though, something that just slightly annoys me with this variation of Chucky is after he kills Nadine, he flip-flops back and forth from being good and evil. One would infer that Chucky is just trying to save face and is just fucking with everyone. But according to Don Mancini, Chucky is literally switching back and forth between being good and evil. Now the reason this annoys me is because this detail is irrelevant as hell, because it goes absolutely nowhere. They exercise his soul within the same episode. Now when it comes to stuff that creators of TV shows, movies, games, etc. have to explain, I tend to not pay attention too much if it's not properly explained or expressed within the actual material. This detail is so irrelevant because it goes absolutely nowhere and changes literally nothing about the plot. Anyway, good Chucky was fine. He was cute, although it made Chucky not scary in the slightest, and as a character on his own, he was just meh. But because he killed Nadine, I hate his little guts. He should have gotten a far worse death than what he actually got. Buff Chucky is boring as shit. Has one of the coolest introductions of any character in this franchise, but he's so one-note and boring that I don't find him entertaining, or am I invested in him enough to take him seriously as a threat. They just put a modulating effect over Dorip's voice, and it's just too distracting for me to take seriously. And before they do anything legitimately interesting with him, he fucking dies! The third Chucky we get is none other than Colonel Chucky.
Look, I'll just keep it a buck with you guys. This Chucky and what they did with him did absolutely nothing for me. And the main reason for that being is that I have not watched Apocalypse Now. Call me an uncultured swine if you want to, but all this Chucky is just Marlon Brando's character from that movie. This whole shtick doesn't really do anything for me because I haven't watched that movie. And I think that's a big enough sign as to why this portrayal of Chucky is a huge problem.
The little references they do just didn't do anything for me and just felt super weird and out of place. On top of all these Chucky variations feeling gimmicky as hell, I also hate the escalation of making Chucky this TV show host big celebrity character. Granted, it is for one episode, and I did find it entertaining, but all this is just painfully unnecessary. I just really did not like the approach they took with this character this season. What makes it even worse is this season severely wasted the multiple doll premise. Since being introduced in Cult, I was excited to see where we could go with this premise. And this season just failed miserably with it. I would have preferred at least a few Chuckies surviving that truck and each going and doing their own thing. That leaves for more opportunities and stories. But no, we were left with these very gimmicky and lame versions instead. I'd want to be hopeful and say that if they take another crack at it, it'd be cool, but another part of me hopes that they don't because it'd feel a little redundant, since they messed it up already, and I wouldn't want to run the risk of it happening again, and just stick to one Chucky for the foreseeable future. Another thing that bothers me about the multiple doll thing this time around is whenever one of these little shits dies, it never really feels satisfying. It just feels like another body being added to the kill count, which I think shouldn't be the case for the antagonist of your story. Sorry to keep harping on this, but a small nitpick I have about the multiple Chucky thing is I don't like how they write every Chucky almost the same. Like, it's more than likely just a me thing, but it's very small moments where they write these different Chuckies like they have the same experiences. The biggest moment that made me realize this is when they removed the Chucky that was inside of Nika's body and put it into another doll. The doll talks to Jake as if he knows him, and even Lexi in the finale. This Chucky has never interacted with these kids, and we know that's the case because he's been stuck with Nika for 2 seasons. And before anyone says something about a hive mind, maybe I'm dumb, but there's been almost zero evidence of a hive mind for the multiple Chuckies. In fact, I think there's more evidence against there being a hive mind than there is for it. I know this is very nitpicky, but I would have preferred to give these different Chuckies a slightly different dynamic with these characters. But that is very much just a me thing. Anyway, to not end things on too much of a negative note, as I've said numerous times casually throughout the video, the cast did pretty well with the material they were given. It was nice to see Devon Sawa return to play Father Bryce, a character I didn't think I'd enjoy as much as I did. But you can also add him to the list of things being wasted in this season. That death scene, while nonsensical, was still pretty damn fun. Looking forward to seeing him return to play the fucking President of the United States in Season 3. Like I also mentioned before, I greatly prefer Alex Vincent's performance as Andy in this season compared to last. That dry, monotone style that he says he's been going for greatly fits better for an Andy who's been tortured for a year. Olivia Allen Lynn proves herself to be the best performer out of our hack and sag trio, once again this season. They all do a great job, and the guy who plays Devin greatly improved from last season. Again, it's just a shame he didn't do much. But still, the best performer out of everyone has to be Fiona Dourif. Even wheelchair-bound for most of the season, she still does a great job as Nika, and especially Chucky. The practical effects were pretty damn good. Some of the time. There were a few moments when liberties were taken with stuff like CGI, and they did look a little wonky, but all in all, the VFX, especially with all the gory kills, makes for some of the best in the franchise. That and the soundtrack I dug as well. I didn't talk too extensively on the OST for Season 1, but I thought it was great. The same goes for this season. The needle drops were all well timed and fit the scenes they were in decently well, and yeah, that's about all I got. Overall, Season 2 of Chucky was a confusing mess. The cast did a pretty decent job. The effects, while hit or miss a few times, still managed to pull through. That going alongside the blood and gore were pretty good. The soundtrack was pretty decent as well. But dear God, the dip in quality in terms of the writing for this show was so damn fast, it's not even funny. The writing for this season was so painfully all over the place. Going back to the meta, self-referential, Seed of Chucky style of writing was this season's biggest downfall. The wacky shit, while entertaining on a surface level, overall just felt unnecessary and out of place. The directions of characters like the various Chuckies, and especially Tiffany, did nothing more than just piss me off. And the usage of legacy characters like Andy and Kyle pissed me off even more. The comedy, or I guess I should say the attempt at it, was very hit or miss, and in general, I don't know what else to say besides this season was just really disappointing. I can't bring myself to say I outright hated it because I truthfully didn't, but the writing choices for our characters, the tone, and the non-existent plot just leaves this season feeling like a giant mess.
Alright, so by the time this video drops, Part 1 of Season 3 of Chucky should be done. And I'm going to do this again, okay? I am hoping that the writing had some significant improvement. Even if it improved a little bit from this season, I'll be satisfied. For those who unironically love Seed of Chucky and love this season, I'm glad you have a season that caters to you and that you enjoy. But for me, and obviously many others, this season was a giant misstep that I desperately hope they correct. Lean more into the scares, or at least keep a balance like in Season 1, because what we have here, this just wasn't it. So, that wraps up this year's Spooktacular. So, if you agree or disagree with anything I've said in this video, let me know right down there in the comments below. Also, be sure to like and subscribe. This is Darion of GNB Productions, and next year we're doing Friday the 13th, so stay tuned for that. And with all that said, take care.